If I could only recommend one thing to improve your health after 50, my suggestion might surprise you. You might guess that it's exercise or nutrition or perhaps a supplement. While those things are important, there is one thing that I believe is vital for health and wellness as we age, and that's sleep. Yet for many men, sleep is often treated like an afterthought, something we squeeze in when everything else is finished. The problem is that after 50, poor sleep doesn't just make you feel tired the next day. It affects your energy, mood, memory, recovery, hormones, appetite, weight, and overall health. Like many men, I've had periods in my life where I didn't give sleep the attention it deserved. I thought I could simply push through fatigue and relentless commitments and make up for it later. Eventually, I learned that recovery doesn't work that way. In this video, I want to talk about why sleep becomes more important as we age, why so many men struggle with it, and provide a few simple practices that have helped me improve my sleep over the years. I'm Sandy, and I'm 56 years old. This channel is called Well Past 50, and it's about aging with intention, without extremes, gimmicks, or borrowed certainty. If you've watched my recent videos on recovery, stress, or cortisol, you've probably noticed a recurring theme. The body needs periods of recovery in order to function properly. Sleep is where much of that recovery happens. It took me years to truly appreciate this. When we're asleep, the body isn't just shutting down. In many ways, it's getting to work. During sleep, the brain processes information and consolidates memories. Hormones are regulated, tissues are repaired, the immune system gets strengthened, muscle recovery occurs, and countless maintenance and repair processes take place behind the scenes. That's why I've come to think of sleep as active recovery rather than just passive rest. But sleep often becomes more challenging as we get older. Many men notice they don't sleep as deeply as they once did. Most of us wake up more often during the night. Some of us find it harder to fall asleep, or we wake up feeling tired despite spending enough hours in bed. I certainly don't sleep the way I did in my 20s, not by a long shot. Back then, I could sleep almost anywhere, anytime, and wake up feeling refreshed. I envy that kid. He really took it for granted. These days, my sleep requires a little more diligence from me. Part of that might be getting older, but I want to be careful not to fall into that trap of blaming everything on aging. I think a lot of sleep issues actually have more to do with modern life. One of the biggest things I've learned is that sleep doesn't begin when your head hits the pillow. Sleep begins the moment you wake up. Now, I know that may sound strange, but stay with me. The choices we make throughout the day influence how well we sleep that night. One of the most important factors is light exposure. Our bodies evolved under natural light conditions. For thousands of generations, sunlight helped regulate our internal clock. Today, many of us spend our days indoors, under artificial lighting, and our evenings staring at screens. This disrupts the natural relationship between cortisol and melatonin that I talked about in my recent cortisol video. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Morning sunlight helps signal to the body that it's time to be alert and awake. Darkness helps signal that it's time to rest. When those signals become blurred, sleep suffers. One of the simplest things I do is go outside shortly after waking up. Even 10 or 15 minutes can make a difference. In the evening, I reduce bright light exposure whenever possible. I use an amber reading light, I turn off overhead lights, I use a few red light lamps, and limit my screen time whenever possible. It requires some discipline, but it's worth the effort to get a good night of sleep. Another factor that affects sleep quality is stress. Most men don't lie awake because they're physically threatened. They lie awake because their minds won't stop running. Work, finances, relationships, health concerns, responsibilities. The body doesn't always know the difference between a real threat and a mental one. If your nervous system remains activated into the evening, quality sleep becomes harder to achieve. This is one of the reasons why recovery and calming practices matter. Things like walking, reading, meditation, breathwork, and time outdoors, just to name a few. These activities help create a transition between the demands of the day and the restfulness of the evening. Let's talk about alcohol for a moment. This one catches a lot of people by surprise. Many men use alcohol to help them fall asleep. And to be fair, it often works. However, falling asleep and sleeping well are not the same thing. Alcohol tends to fragment sleep later in the night. You may fall asleep faster, but sleep quality often suffers. You wake up more frequently, and as a result, recovery declines. This leaves many people feeling less refreshed the next morning. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone needs to eliminate alcohol completely, but if sleep is a struggle, it's worth paying attention to the relationship. Personally, I rarely drink alcohol, and when I do, it's in very limited quantities. Caffeine deserves a mention too. I used to be a coffee drinker. I really loved a good cup of coffee, or 2, or 3. But around age 50, coffee stopped being my friend. It left me wired, jittery, and sweaty for hours. Caffeine has a much longer half-life than most people realize. That afternoon coffee may still be influencing your evening sleep. Everyone's tolerance is different, but many sleep experts recommend limiting caffeine later in the day. For some people, noon is a good cutoff. For others, it may be earlier. The important thing is to pay attention to how your body responds to coffee and other caffeinated beverages. If it's disrupting your sleep, you have to decide if it is worth the cost. Let's talk about rhythm. No, not your smooth moves on the dance floor. I'm talking about your lifestyle habits and routines. One thing I've become increasingly aware of is the importance of consistency. Going to bed at midnight one night, 9 o'clock the next, and 1 in the morning after that creates confusion. The same is true for waking up at irregular intervals. A consistent sleep and wake schedule helps reinforce healthy circadian rhythms. Again, perfection isn't required, life happens, but overall consistency matters. I typically go to bed between 9 and 10 p.m. and wake up around 7 a.m. 7 to 9 hours of sleep is the sweet spot according to sleep research, and I find that the 9-hour range is where I feel my best. Hence my early to bed and somewhat early to rise routine. But quality matters as much as quantity when it comes to sleep. Over the years, I've developed a handful of sleep practices that work well for me. I get outside most mornings. I limit bright light exposure in the evening. I steer clear of caffeine. I eat my evening meal between 5 and 6 p.m. and then don't eat anything until breakfast the next morning. I keep my bedroom cool, quiet, and really dark. And I try to maintain a reasonably consistent sleep schedule. Now, none of these practices are revolutionary, but together they make a meaningful difference. The bigger lesson I've learned is this: you can't muscle through poor sleep for long, and you certainly can't out-willpower poor sleep forever without consequences. Eventually, the bill comes due. After 50, sleep becomes one of the foundations that everything else sits upon. When sleep improves, many other things tend to improve alongside it. Your energy, mood, recovery, decision-making, craving, stress management, and overall quality of life. While quality nighttime sleep should always be the priority, I'm also a fan of the occasional nap. My dad lived to 88 and rarely missed his afternoon nap. He stayed healthy and active until the last few months of his life. Obviously, napping wasn't the only reason he lived that long, but I do think short periods of daytime rest can be restorative. Research suggests that brief naps can improve alertness, mood, and cognitive performance. The key is keeping them relatively short, generally 20 to 30 minutes, so they don't interfere with nighttime sleep. Think of naps as a supplement to good sleep, not a replacement for it. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this conversation, it's this: sleep isn't lost time. Sleep is an investment. It's one of the most powerful recovery tools available to all of us. And unlike most health interventions, it's completely free. Prioritize it, protect it, treat it with the same respect you give exercise and nutrition. Your future self will thank you for it. If you want more conversations around fitness, nutrition, mental health, and recovery for men over 50, you're welcome to subscribe. Thanks for being here.